Welcome to session 3 of Building Calmness. Now, I'm going to show you the next steps, but if you have found that your dog is still building their confidence with Mark the Trigger, this is really normal. 10 days is not really a huge amount of time for the kind of behaviour change that we're looking at. We're really just setting foundations. So if your dog is still working on Mark the Trigger, then just watch this video. You'll see what kind of signs that you're looking for when he's ready, or they are ready. I say he because I've got Moose here, good boy. For when your dog is ready to move on to the next stage. But these videos are going to stay up for at least the next few weeks. You've got access to them for longer than just the 10 days of the emails coming through. Than just the 10 days of the emails coming through of your course. Good boy. So don't rush this, but have a watch, see what we're looking for the next stage, and if your dog is ready, then start moving on to this week, Mark the Turn. Good boy. Now to start, I'm still going to start with Mark the Trigger. And especially because it's actually been a few weeks since I've seen this little man and I've got a different toy. But also you want to do this anyway. So you won't go straight to Mark the Turn until your dog has played Mark the Trigger, Mark the Turn so many times that they're a pro. So we're always going to start with Mark the Trigger. Okay. Yep. And again, turn his head. We're still doing Mark the Trigger. Yep. 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 So you can see now when I say yep, he's starting to turn his head a bit himself. Good boy. That was my fault. As I was talking to you, I didn't mark as soon as he looked at the trigger. Good boy. So I'm just going to do one more round. But this time, what you'll spot is that once he starts turning his head, I'm going to see if he's ready to do Mark the Turn, which means I say yep when he turns his head instead of when he looks at the trigger. Right, sit. Good boy. Yep. 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 Good boy. So let's do a couple more Mark the Triggers again because we can move fluidly between them. Yep. Just because he's changed position. Good boy. Yep. Let's see. Yep. So now I marked the turn. He looks. Yep. And I mark when he turns his head. Yep. He did turn his head, not towards me, but I'm going to take that. Yep. He has to look at the object first though. Yep. Otherwise we're not building impulse control, we're building avoidance. Yep. Good boy. I should have marked when he looked away again. Good boy. Yep. Good boy. Now let's try and make this a little bit harder. So I'm going to mark the trigger again. Yep. Because it's now much harder. Yep. Good boy. Yep. Good boy. Yep. And I'm waiting till he shows me he's ready. Yep. Good boy. Too hard. Fine, so we're just going to put it away for a moment. This is away. Good boy. But this is what it's all about. And I'm just going to give him a quick break. And then I'm going to go back to doing the easier. So the whole thing about building this up so that your dog reaches a stage where they can look at a trigger and then just check straight in with you is during the learning stage, we've got to be able to read our dog and move between the stages. And this will take a bit of practice. But he did really well in the end on the static one. So we went from Mark the Trigger, the moment he looked at it, to Mark the Turn, which was he'd look at it and then he'd turn away and I'd mark that turn. That's him beginning to show real self-control because he's choosing to look at his trigger and then choosing to look away. Then I increase the difficulty, which might be, for example, a dog trigger that you're out and about has been standing still and your dog's doing really well and you're marking the turn, but then the dog starts walking towards you. Then you go back to Mark the Trigger. So as it gets more difficult, you have to move between mark the trigger and mark the turn. So I went back to marking the trigger, but I think because he was in his down and I was moving it so much, when I leant down to give him the reward, I was bringing the toy too close to his face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. We're going to do it static, so holding the toy still, and then I'm going to go back to moving it again. Let's try it from this angle. You won't be able to see his eyes as much, but I'll try and get some really nice turns. Yep. Yep. So marking the trigger. Yep. And it's the moment he looks every time. Yep. And he's now turning his own head, so let's try and mark the turn. He did a little glance there, which wasn't helpful for you. He looks, yep, and he looked back at me. So I said, yep, as he turned his head. Yep. Good boy. Well done, good boy. Now, he did quite a long look that time. The main thing is that I don't suddenly decide to mark the trigger on a long stare, because we don't want to teach them to stare at it for a long time. So if he hadn't managed to look away for mark the turn, I just put the toy away. And I put the toy away anyway, just so that I could tell you that. So you never want to mark a long stare, but if they do a long stare and then turn back to you and you mark the turn, that's absolutely fine. So they don't have to turn away really quickly, but you don't want to mark the trigger once you've missed that first glance. Good boy. No, sit. Thank you. Good boy. Okay. Yep. Good boy. Yep. Good boy. Yep. Yep. Good. So he's managing to turn his own head. So I'm going to move to mark the turn. Good boy. Yep. Good. Good boy, well done. So marking a different turn there. Good boy. I know, it's hard. Good boy, sit. Good. Sit's just helping him have a bit more control and he's down even more so. Yep. So I'm back to mark the trigger because we've started again. Yep. Good. Yep. And he can't turn his head himself yet. Yep. Good boy. Yep. Good. Now he's turning his head himself, so let's try and mark the turn. Good boy. Ready? Okay. Good boy. Did you get it? So on that final one, because that was plenty long enough for a session, to be honest, that was a bit longer than would be ideal. You only want to do a few minutes. I haven't actually put any treats in that. Give me a second. So you want to do maximum 3 minutes of intense training before giving your dog at least a couple of minutes break, and you wouldn't want to do more than 3 minutes on, 2 minutes off, 3 minutes on, 2 minutes off, 3 minutes on in any given single session where they're not getting downtime, because they're actually going to stop learning much after that point. So 12 minutes, is that right? No, 13 minutes is your absolute maximum, and that includes a couple of 2-minute breaks. But in a more ideal world, you're just going to do 3 minutes here and 3 minutes there throughout the day. And if all you can do is one lot of 3 minutes, that is still going to get progress. So just do what works for you and your dog. But what you did see was that initially we kept working on self-control, it kept going away, But at the end of today's session, I decided that he would get to play with that toy. Because in the real world, sometimes when they, again, I'm going to use a dog as the most common trigger, but whether it's a person, whatever it is, sometimes they're going to look at that trigger and the plan is that they don't get to engage with them at all and we're going to walk off. But also at other times, you may well say to your dog, yes, okay, off you go and play with them. Because actually you know that dog, you know that person, and you are rewarding your dog for seeing their friend, but checking in with you first and you then saying, off you go. So for him today, at the end, to say well done, because I know he really struggled with that, he actually gets to then play with the toy. But perhaps on his next session, he won't get to play with that toy at the end. But I might let him play with another toy because I still want him to have a nice time, or I might give him a scatter feed. So he'll still get something lovely at the end of his training session, but he won't always get the toy, but sometimes he will. And that seems really counterintuitive because now, next time when we play mark the trigger, mark the turn with this toy, surely he's going to be even more excited by it. But actually rewarding them with the thing that they most want to do, i.e. at that point, he most wanted to play with the toy, actually strongly increases the likelihood that he's going to do better on the next session. But not if I gave it to him every time, because then he'd be like, well, we're just doing this till I get it. So that's why sometimes you give it to him and sometimes you don't. So what we're going to now do is give him a good old break. But what you want to build up is practicing it at home until, just like with the other one, you can then go out and about with him and start doing it with real triggers. And if you have a friend or family member, just like with the last session, you could also do an interim stage where they act as the trigger, just so that you get to practice with moving objects that are further away and that you have less control over. But because you've seen that in the last session, hopefully that makes sense. You just do exactly the same, but with a priority on hopefully getting to mark the turn. So when I go out with him, am I going to take the same food that I've been using here? Absolutely not. The reason for that is that what I'm using here is pretty much normal food with a little bit of exciting stuff added in. Whereas when we first start taking mark the turn out and about, it is incredibly important that we have something super exciting, and that's something your dog finds super exciting. Now again, that can be a toy, but if it's a toy, then just be aware that you're not going to get as many repetitions in. So because it's going to be so much harder at the park, for him, his super high value. So what I've got for Moose is a bit of squeezy cheese. Now, I don't want to use this for long. It is not, good boy, he's just been off playing with another dog, so just give him a reward for coming back instead of going on that dog's walk. A dog that lives at the same place he does, I should say. Lucy! Oh, Lucy! Good boy. Ready? So at the park, I'm going to be using this. Now, I don't want to use this for long. It's not great for our dogs and we need to keep it super high value. But what is beneficial is that it involves licking rather than chewing. And it's much easier to then get it on his nose and move his head when he's in a particularly exciting environment versus just a little tidbit on his nose, which if there's a dog and he's thinking, I really want to play with that dog, that tidbit's going to be quite hard to move his head, you know, when we do mark the trigger and then need to move their head to reach the stage where they're going to be able to move their head themselves. Otherwise, we'll never have a turn to mark the turn. So I will take my super high value and the first few sessions, that's what I'm going to use. But then as I get an idea of what kind of distance he does well at, how he's coping, then I can just start going back to slightly more normal, exciting food items. And then I can gradually move it down to more normal dinner-based food items the longer we've played, and depending on how far the dog is, and therefore how hard you find it. Isn't it? Right, so keep watching and I will show you the next stage. Good boy, you are such a good boy. Right, let's put that all together, see how it goes. Good boy. Yep. Good boy. Good. Yep. I'm going to put it on his nose and bring it round because he's finding this because I've clearly upped the ante. Yep. A bit too quickly, so I'm going to put it on his nose, bring him round. Yep. Good boy. Good boy. Yep. And come through. Yeah, good boy. Good boy. Good. Yep. Yep. Good boy. Yep. Good. So now he's beginning to turn his head himself. That's an improvement. Good boy. Good. Good boy. You're doing really well. Yep. Good boy. Yep. So we've just got another dog behind, so I'm now going to play with them as well. Yep. Good boy. Yep. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. That time I marked the turn. Yes. Good boy. Yes. Good boy. Sorry. Do you want me to move away a bit? Does that help? It's very cute. Excellent eyebrows. Good boy. That's it. Good boy. Yeah. Good boy. Yeah. Yeah. Good boy. Go. Good. Well done. Good boy. So we moved away because there was someone behind the camera whose dog had laid down and was refusing to move. So by us moving away, he was able to move on with his dog. But he was talking about how handsome you were, wasn't he? Yeah. So I was waiting for them to play ball again, so we've got something to play with. Yeah. Ha! Yes. Should play again. Good boy. Okay, ready? I have to look first, sorry. Oi. So I mark the trigger first. Is the dog playing ball? So the moment he looks, I don't want to pause at all. The moment he looks each time. And I've got something very exciting to eat, very tasty. And if he can't move his head himself, then I just move it by putting it on his nose and turning. But then get to the point where he can turn after the yep. Let's do one more where he looks. So marked the trigger. Now let's see if I can mark the turn. Good boy. Not my best mark, but very pleased with him there. Let's try again. Yep. Now it's important, if I got it wrong, I don't then mark a long stare. So mark the trigger. Once you've moved to mark the turn, you can't suddenly then mark them staring at the trigger. So once you've moved to mark the turn, you have to wait. Yep. But you could then go back to mark the trigger on the next one. Yep. It's just mark the trigger always has to be the moment he looks. So you can move to mark the trigger like I did there, but I'm going to go back to mark the turn. Yeah, good boy. Good boy. Well done. Right, I'm going to do one more. Good boy. And that's it. You want to keep it short and sweet. So for him, watching a dog getting to chase a ball and him not getting to go play is really quite tricky. So now he's going to only be able to play the game for so long before it becomes too hard. So we're now going to, good boy, walk away and head off in that direction. And that is all we're going to do for this later stage of Mark's return.